Sales of new homes have climbed to a 2-year high. Does that mean the housing crisis is all over? I'm Alan Barton. Stand by for Front Page.
New homes are going up. In fact, construction workers are breaking ground on new homes in America at the fastest pace in more than 4 years.
All right, joining me in studio, Terry Jones of Investors Business Daily and Yaron Brook of the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights. Terry, obviously the president there touting these new housing figures. Is there something here to be cheerful about, or is this ginned up activity because of other sort of machinations behind the scenes?
Well, it's largely ginned up. I mean, let's be honest about what's going on here. People have lost their fear now of the housing market, largely because they believe prices have stopped falling so precipitously as they were 2 years ago. And so you have people, stepping in one toe at a time into the housing market and starting to buy homes again. That's a good thing. But it's all being propped up by cheap money from the Fed. The Fed is a zero interest rate policy that lets people borrow effectively for 3.5%, 4%. I mean, extraordinary low levels. And these levels are what's driving the housing activity. At some point, and that point may come a lot sooner than people think, interest rates are going to turn up. And once again, people with variable rate mortgages and those with old mortgages are going to be in trouble again. So no, the housing market has not gotten better, not measurable.
Just to add to that, all of this is being subsidized by Freddie and Fannie bigger than ever, right? Now they buy up 90% of all the loans. So they messed up during the 2000s, so let's double up on our bets and let's do even more of this. So yes, this is all ginned up through government programs to encourage people to get into the housing market again. The solution to a housing bubble is not to create another one.
That's just a quick point here. That's something that's very critical here. Fannie and Freddie were at the core of this housing crisis. They are still doing what they did before. Except more so. And Obama pretends that through Dodd-Frank they addressed all the problems because they addressed all those greedy banks. Well, the problem at the heart of it all was Fannie and Freddie, and they are unmolested in this. Oh yeah, they're under government conservatorship, but if you were to put them into receivership, as they should be, all those debts would revert to the public, and they wouldn't want that. So.
And what's interesting is while the banks have returned top, right, most of the money that there was so-called the bailout of the banks, that's been returned. Freddie and Fannie still owe, I think it's $140 billion, and we will never see that money. That money is sunk forever, and they keep putting more in. As Freddie and Fannie lose money, they keep putting more in.
$1 billion is $1 billion. Unless that number starts with T, we don't pay attention anymore. Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz recently said about both presidential candidates, quote, "As soon as you start talking about mortgages and the housing problem, both sides feel uncomfortable. Obama hasn't done enough, and Romney has no real proposals." So let's take a look at Romney's first. Obviously, he got in trouble early on because he said what probably we believe, which is that you got to let the market go down to the bottom and sort all this out, let the foreclosure process run its course. That's the famous quote, which they jumped on and said, aha, he wants to kick Granny out of their homes. He's a merciless capitalist pig. He's backed off since then. What do you think of his plan, if there is one really, if it's something other than a generality? Do you think he really does believe in that free market principle and is now just not saying it because it has a bad narrative? Or do you think he's going to be fooling around trying to gin the system up in some other way?
I'd say yes to both. I think in his heart of hearts he knows that this market needs to find a bottom, that we need to get government out of the way. But he also knows that once he becomes president, he's going to be dealing with a significant block of Democrats in Congress, and they will no way let this happen. We saw that during the Bush administration. George Bush tried several times, as did Republicans in Congress, and the Democrats basically threatened to shut down Congress over changes to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And then when it happened, when the financial crisis happened, they ran away from their responsibility and blamed Wall Street.
All right, let's take a look at another clip of the president on what he'd like to see done to help homeowners.
So back in February, I sent Congress a plan to give every responsible homeowner the chance to save about $3,000 a year on their mortgage by refinancing at historically low rates. That's the equivalent of a $3,000 tax cut. It's a plan we know will work.
No such thing as a free lunch. How come it just doesn't, we moved money from here to here. We moved borrowed money from this person to that person. We're refinancing via the taxpayer to replace the personal debt with public debt. And we know this is going to work. What is it? It's just...
So as long as I'm the one who gets the $3,000, I'm okay with it.
You're cool, right?
I mean, this is more of the government trying to micromanage the housing market. This is how we got into this problem. It's all those incentives and subsidies and low interest rates that were driving Americans to 70% home ownership. And that's how we got this crisis. So again, let's double up on everything we did wrong. We had too big to fail, let's make too big to fail bigger. We had Freddie and Fannie, let's make Freddie and Fannie too bigger. We had 1% interest rates, and those were a disaster, so let's make them 0% now. And we give tax deductibility of interest, so let's give now, on top of that, another $3,000. This is insanity. This is trying to double up on bad policies with expectation that somehow something good will happen. This has to find a bottom. What we should be doing is making it easy for banks to foreclose on people. Let's get this over with as quickly and as effectively as possible. What is holding up the housing market today is we still have a huge pipeline of foreclosures because the courts, because the state,
you're holding prices at where they are as opposed to letting them fall anymore? Or
well,
are you
not just letting them fall, holding up the recovery, free up the inventory. Let's figure out how many houses we really need. Let's figure out what the true demand is, what the true supply is, and let's have a real marketplace in housing rather than all these little bubbles that is what's created. And I think, going back to Romney's plan has evolved into an Obama light, and you listen to debates on almost every issue. Romney seems to think that the Obama policies are generally popular, and therefore he just has to offer something, a version of it, when he should have stuck to his guns. I know it's unpopular, but I think he could have made the case if he would have argued that this crisis was caused by government, and the way to avoid a future crisis is to get government out of the way.
All right, according to data, the data analysis firm CoreLogic, nearly 10.8 million properties, that's 22% of the homes in the country, have mortgages that are underwater. Underwater mortgages, they owe more than the home is actually worth, which is a perilous condition. A lot of those people can continue making payments, but they're locked in. They can't move, they can't sell. Yaron is, you guys are both eager participants in
this. 22%.
Exactly. I'm 30% underwater. I'm a submariner.
Right, exactly. So, but look, you guys are, you got your jobs, you're driving your cars, you put gas in the tank. So it's not necessarily something that is like, oh my God, everyone's being kicked out of their homes. But tell us what it does. What does it do for you in terms of the outlook and what you feel you can do or not do with regard to homeownership?
Well, for one thing, you can't refinance. You can't refinance. You can't borrow against your home because there's no equity. And also, should I be offered a job in Tierra del Fuego, I can't move because I can't sell my house. So it's a big problem, and it really does lock people into a geographical region. And as Yaron suggested, having a free market and letting this problem just work itself out in the space of a couple of years would be so much infinitely better, because all of a sudden you'd be able to sell your house at a reasonable price and move away, or you'd be kicked out of your house, either way.
And this is something we said 3 years ago. I mean, if those of you who've watched the show regularly, it would be over by now. We'd be on the upside, on the upswing. Home prices would be increasing. Now, look, the other thing that Americans need to stop believing in is that their home is an investment. Homes are a consumption product. Home is like an automobile. When you move into it, you're using it. Using it means it should go down in value, not up in value. The only reason it goes up in value is artificially because of government policies, whether it's zoning or whether it's something else. We need to stop viewing our home as an ATM, stop viewing our home as an investment good. It's a consumption good. You buy it, you live in it, great. You sell it, you move on. And that needs to change in terms of people's orientation.
All right, story this week regarding Bank of America. Top federal prosecutor in New York suing B of A for $1 billion for a program called Hustle. And this is with Countrywide, which B of A then bought. Countrywide was carrying out where sketchy loans went through the system, little oversight, this kind of no-doc loans, just send us your request, sign here, here's your money. With an emphasis on quantity over quality, bonuses paid on deals closed, not good deals. Obviously, these loans were not paid back, and everyone took a haircut. So is B of A responsible here? I mean, in terms of looking at Countrywide, obviously this is a, they're not doing due diligence. Who's responsible for the fact that the bank didn't do due diligence on these loans?
Partly the banks are, but mostly the government is. Again, this whole lending frenzy was driven by the government's policies, which were to put every minority household in America into a home that they owned, whether they were creditworthy or not. And banks got perks. You could merge with another bank. You could expand your network of banks. There are lots of things that came with doing what the government told you to do. And then when they did it with I would say an irresponsible degree, now they're suing them. This is not housing policy. Or this is a replacement for a housing policy, suing banks so they can pretend to be doing something about the housing.
Yeah, I mean, is there responsibility on the bank's part? Given, we have a completely flawed structure, as we've covered a million times, with government intervention, inflating the marketplace, altering the marketplace, and doing all these distortions, and banks take advantage of that. Who should be held accountable for the bank's malfeasance? They did put out these bogus loans.
If they really committed fraud here, then go sue them. But this drives me nuts because this is so unjust. Who bought up these loans without even questioning anything, and used government, our money, taxpayer money to do it? Freddie and Fannie. I want those institutions, I want those CEOs to face, the courts. They're the ones who are criminally liable for this financial crisis. Until you deal with Freddie and Fannie, the government does not have a right to go after any other bank.
Because the banks wouldn't have had any loans to sell. They wouldn't have been able to sell these loans to anybody if Fannie and Freddie hadn't been buying them. So they would have been forced by the marketplace to say, we're only issuing loans that make sense.
Absolutely. But this case is worse than that because this is Countrywide, right? Countrywide was going bust, and the government was afraid that going bust would have a disastrous economic effect. So they arm-twisted Bank of America into buying them. It was completely organized by government. Bank of America did not want Countrywide, certainly not at that price.
And now they're being sued.
And now they're being sued. And they did the same thing with Merrill Lynch. They forced Bank of America to take over Merrill Lynch. Then they sued Bank of America for something. This is one of, this whole handling of the financial crisis, and it was under Bush. But the Justice Department now and what they did to the auto companies, a complete negation of the principles of the rule of law. And then, because people have forgotten and they can't remember the Countrywide was bought by Bank of America under FDIC kind of arm twisting, now we go after Bank of America as if they're the villain. It is just so dishonest. And in the meantime, the real crooks, congressmen in the House, senators in the Senate, and people at Freddie and Fannie, they get away scot-free. I mean, when are they going to go after Dodd-Frank? Because Chris Dodd, and Barney Frank were the two guys supporting Freddie and Fannie throughout this process. They were getting huge amounts of money from them.
And Dodd got his home refinanced by Countrywide at very favorable terms, if I recall.
Yes. A low interest rate loan. No, of course not. He was part of the VIP program, but I didn't get special treatment.
No. All right, well, there you have the housing crisis in a nutshell. That's all the time we have. For Terry and Yaron, I'm Alan Barton. You've been watching Front Page.